Good morning, good morning, good morning. This is Second and Medium, our college football podcast. Preston Jackson, Big County Preps on the horn today. Super Bowl champ, two-time Super Bowl champion, Booger McFarland. You can catch him on the SEC Network. Mike and Mike, all over the radio. Boog, good morning to you.
What's going on, Preston? How you doing, buddy?
Ready to rock and roll, man. A busy weekend we had, man. I appreciate you asking. Doing well, doing well. Let's jump right into it. A lot of good games this weekend. Kind of like weekend number one. We had a down weekend two, but it's third weekend of college football really kicked off. Let's start with the big boys, Bama and Ole Miss. Bama pulled it out, ended up winning 48-43. Ole Miss again forgetting how to finish football games. Boog, what's your take on that game?
Well, I don't know if Ole Miss forgot how to finish football games. I just think it's who they are. I mean, they came out against Florida State and built a big lead, and all of a sudden Florida State comes roaring back, not necessarily because of what Florida State did, although they did do some good things, but you got to look at Ole Miss and how their offense plays at such a high tempo and leaves their defense on the field so long. That defense played almost 100 plays against Florida State, and they were just worn out and tired down the stretch. And then you get to the Alabama game, and they come out just, I mean, their hair was on fire. They were playing great, but their ability to not run the football, their ability to stop the run eventually caught up with this team. So Ole Miss has a very high-powered offense, but when you can't run the ball on high-level football or against a high-level team, you're going to struggle to close out games, and that's what Ole Miss does.
Where do you see Ole Miss now in that SEC West, Boog? They still have LSU on the schedule. They got to see Arkansas. How do you see them finishing in that side of the conference?
I still think Alabama's the cream of the crop in the West. I think that, behind them, you got Texas A&M, you got Ole Miss. We don't know what LSU is going to be now that they switched quarterbacks. So I think Ole Miss is in the mix to be right in the two spot. They play well. I think they got the most seasoned quarterback in the conference. There's no doubt about it. The offensive weapons are plenty. But once again, the big elephant in the room is, can Ole Miss run the football? And I'll give you a prime example, Preston. They got down to the 1 yard line against Alabama and couldn't punch it in because their ability to knock people off the ball wasn't there. And that's one of the things where in the SEC, in order to win this conference, it's a line of scrimmage league. And if you can't win the line of scrimmage at some point, you're not going to be able to win many games against equal level competition. You beat Vanderbilt and Kentucky and some of those guys, but you can't beat the big boys. And I think Ole Miss right now, because their offense is so explosive, they're going to be in the mix. But until they're able to finish games, I just think they're right there in the mix with LSU, A&M, and as far as being the number 2 team in the West behind Alabama, who's right now running away with it.
Let's skip over to the ACC, Louisville, Florida State. Louisville, everybody thought Louisville was pretty good, but nobody saw Louisville on a national stage dominate as they did against Florida State. A 63-20 win for the Cardinals, but before they took the starters out, Boog, it was 63-10. And they averaged, Florida State got to put some points on the board late. How good is that quarterback? How good is Lamar Jackson?
He's the best player in the country right now. And I don't know how that's going to translate to the professional level, nor do I care right now. But when you look at what Bobby Petrino does with him offensively, Bobby Petrino's passing game may be the most sophisticated on a collegiate level. He understands how to get guys running wide open. He understands how to get guys to play in the scheme. And, Lamar Jackson struggled with that last year. He struggled throwing the football from the pocket. He struggled controlling the game with his arm. Well, this year, he seemingly has fixed that. So now imagine a guy that's as athletic as he is, okay, and as quick as he is, and you put him in the game, and you don't know what to prepare for. Is he going to gut you with the pass in this sophisticated passing game, or is he going to kill you with the zone read? Right now, he's the most complete player in America. He's touching the football every single play. And his ability to control the game and make plays from the quarterback position right now is second to none. And to me, he's the leading guy. I know it's way too early. It's September. But he's the guy right now that leads in the clubhouse for the Heisman Trophy right now in a way too early prediction.
Well, I'm glad you said that because I happen to be a fan of Christian McCaffrey over at Stanford. And if you had to put them side by side, the way Lamar Jackson dominated the FSU game, I think was one nobody expected. Christian McCaffrey's body of work going into last year. However, the Heisman Trophy is not given for a last year player; it's given for this year's player. I still think he's doing himself some favors with how he's playing against top-notch competition over there at Pac-12. So I think Lamar Jackson, the Heisman Trophy is a quarterback award. However, I think the guy Christian McCaffrey, with how many different ways that he produces at the collegiate level, at the big-time level, I think he's a close second. Would you agree or disagree?
Yeah, I think he's going to be right there. I like Christian McCaffrey. I like what he does. I think he gets hurt a little bit because of the Pac-12 after dark scenario where they play so late on the East Coast. A lot of people don't get an opportunity to watch him, even though this week they played at 8 o'clock. So you got a chance to see a guy who, I want to say, 4 games in a row, he's gone over 200 all-purpose yards. So he's a jack of all trades. He's a true Swiss Army knife.
Mm-hmm.
He can gut you from the punt return position. He can gut you from the kickoff return. He can kill you in the eye as a tailback and as a receiver out of the backfield. So he's the biggest mismatch nightmare in what I call the Swiss Army knife for college football because he can do so many things. And if Stanford goes on to win a lot of ball games, and let's face it, the Heisman Trophy now has come down to not necessarily being the best player, but it's being the best player on the best team. So as long as Louisville wins, Lamar Jackson is going to be up there. If Louisville finishes 9-3, I don't know if Lamar Jackson can win the Heisman. It's like Derrick Henry last year. Derrick Henry won the Heisman in large part because Alabama was so good.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think that, Christian McCaffrey, his team, Louisville, Lamar Jackson, they got to keep winning. As long as they keep winning, I think both of those guys will be up there at the end of the year.
Now, I know we give Louisville's offense a lot of credit. 70 points against Charlotte, 62 points against Syracuse, 63 against Florida State. But opposite side of the ball, Boog, you'll appreciate this. Charlotte only allowed 14. Syracuse allowed just under 30 with 28 points. And in Florida State's offense, they allowed 20. Where do you see their defense, man?
Their defense is fast. It's athletic. It feeds off the home crowd. They got a couple of guys that can make a difference. Devontae Fields transferred from TCU. He's phenomenal. They got some guys that can rush the passer. And this is the reason their team marries together so much. Because their offense is very explosive. So what happens when you have an explosive offense, you're going to get a lot of leads. But you don't need the biggest team in the world. You need a team that's fast. You need guys that can run the back end. Because you're going to face a lot of passes, okay? Teams are going to be trying to catch up.
Right.
So their defense marries very well with their offense, much like we did in Indianapolis. When I played in Indianapolis with Peyton Manning, that whole team was built around the coach and Peyton Manning's ability to get a lead and the offense's ability to go. I was the heaviest guy on defense at 295. We were a small defense, but we wanted to be able to be small and run because we were going to face a lot of teams throwing the football. So I think that the Louisville Cardinals defense is built the same way. They got some great playmakers on the edge. And I think as long as they can play with a lead, they'll be okay. I would really be curious to see how they handle being down 7, down 10 to a team that can run the football because I don't think they're the most physical bunch, even though they play physical at times.
Well, let's go to an independent, my alma mater, Notre Dame. Lost to Michigan State and all that hurts. Losing to Michigan State hurts every single time. I'm just not a Michigan State fan, being an Irish guy. 36-28. Irish again failed to put an adequate defense on the field. I'm just not a fan of the front seven. I knew the secondary was going to come in young and inexperienced, but the front seven is just super soft to me, Boog. We can score points inconsistently, but we can't stop anybody, and that is consistent to me, Boog. Did you happen to catch any of that Notre Dame-Michigan State game?
Well, I said before the game, and I said this on ESPN, is that if this game was a track meet, Notre Dame would win. If this game was a slugfest, Notre Dame was going to lose. This game turned into a slugfest. Notre Dame proved week 1 against Texas, physicality, stopping the run, was not a strong suit there. I'm glad they went with Deshaun Kaiser, played him full-time at the quarterback position. That's what they needed to do. He's a better passer. He might be the first pick in the draft next year if he decides to come out. That being said, I do think that Notre Dame right now can only win one way. To me, they can only win by playing up-tempo, throwing the football, mixing in some quarterback run, and that's what they need to play. Defensively, losing a couple of safeties for suspension hurt them. Their ability to control the line of scrimmage with the defensive line hurt them. Sheldon Day, he's no longer there. Some of the guys that they counted on last year are no longer there, and they're struggling to stop it. And all Michigan State did was, line up and just play bully football. They beat them up front. L.J. Scott turned out some tough yards. And Michigan State's defense was able to make a lot more stops against Deshaun Kaiser in an offense than I thought they would. So Notre Dame is a flawed team, even though we were thinking, hey, maybe, a dark horse for the college football playoff. They're a flawed team right now because their inability to consistently control the line of scrimmage. I like Kaiser. Like I said, I think he's the best quarterback in the country as far as pro potential. But I do think they're going to struggle with the more physical teams until the defensive line and even the offensive line can continue to step up.
Michigan State with 241 yards through the air, 260 on the ground versus the Irish. 8 different ball carriers for Michigan State that game. How about Syracuse and USF, man? I'm just going to ask you straight up. Is USF the best team in the state of Florida?
Nah, I think that's a bit of a stretch. They're going to get their opportunity against Florida State this week. They've been pointing to this game for a long time. I think Florida State losing to Louisville wasn't the best thing for USF. USF is building. I like what Coach Willie Taggart is doing. I like the way they use Flowers in the run game and the pass game. Marlon Mack is a very, very good back. They're building. Okay, they didn't start so well against Syracuse. But the old USF team would have quit, kind of rolled over. This USF team now showed a little moxie, showed a little resilience. They came back and did what they were supposed to do, which is win going away against Syracuse. And so I think where they are now is right where they should be. They're going to get a litmus test this week against Florida State just to see how they match up. And we'll know a lot more about where the South Florida program is Saturday evening, probably about 8 or 9 o'clock once this game is in and you've had a chance to digest it. We'll find out a lot more. I like where they are right now. I think if you had to list the schools in Florida, I think they're maybe 3rd or 4th right now. Florida State is clearly 1. I think the Gators are 2. And I think USF and Miami are kind of right in the same area. And which coach between Mark Richt and Willie Taggart can take their program to the next level, I think is going to be in line for that 3rd spot. Mark Richt obviously has a lot of talent to work with down in Miami, that area. It's kind of like the whole Howard Snellenberger theory. If we just win the state of Miami in recruiting, we'll be okay. Well, it's the same thing for Willie Taggart. If they can just win Tampa and the I-4 corridor, USF is going to be okay. So whichever coach can continue to build a program and add to the talent base, I think is eventually going to take that 3rd spot in the state. But right now, it's Florida State, Florida, and then everyone else right now.
That Florida State USF game is at Raymond James, 12 p.m. USF 56, 48, and 45 points respectively versus their last 3 opponents. And Boog, the defense is playing fairly well also. Allowed 20 against Townsend and Syracuse, just 17 against Northern Illinois. I thought that their defensive line was built to stop the run. They struggled against the pass. I thought the secondary was going to be tested against Syracuse, which they were early, but then responded in the second half, as we both agreed upon. And then the quarterback play. I think Quentin Flowers is starting to become a more consistent passer. In his career, he's been really inconsistent, can be inaccurate at times, but he depends on his legs to get him out of trouble. But I think he's starting to grow up some and become a pretty good dual-threat quarterback in that Willie Taggart system.
Well, no doubt about it. And the quarterback position has always been kind of disarray. I remember, back in the day, they had the bench kid. They had guys that they was just rolling quarterback after quarterback after quarterback at USF. Asante Willard was a guy they wanted to throw in there. So Flowers now gives them an opportunity, hopefully, to settle that position down and to build around and know each week who you're going to put out there. To me, that's the key.
Well, let's go on to the West Coast. Stanford, USC. USC with a tough first 3 games of the season, man. When we saw that schedule, I think we both can agree that, opening up with Bama and then his 3rd game against Stanford, the first 3 games were going to be a doozy. Stanford won this game 27-10. They kind of had USC's number over the past 5 years in some really good contests. What's your take on USC as a team And then B, on Stanford's outlook. Where you see Stanford ending up at?
USC is a team, number one, I'll start with the coach. As far as Clay Helton is concerned, that seat's got to be getting awfully hot out there. A lot of people were very surprised when he got that job. As a matter of fact, the last 3 USC hires haven't been what I would call A hires for a program as rich in tradition as USC. So I think that seat's warming up a little bit, and we'll see where that goes, number one. As far as where they go, they want to be this offense that can be very versatile. Since Helton has taken over, they're running the ball about 6 to 8 more times than when Steve Sarkisian was there. So they're trying to be physical, but then they want to line up in the shotgun to be able to get the football to Juju Smith-Schuster down the field. So I think they have to figure out what their identity is on offense. They're still building a talent base back up after all the sanctions. I think long-term, I don't know if Clay Helton is the answer. I've talked to some prominent alumni out there. They don't think he's the answer. So I think the USC program is going to struggle this year. Alabama exposed them. I think Stanford reaffirmed that. So we'll see where that goes. As far as Stanford is concerned, Preston, I think David Shaw gets more out of less than anyone in America as far as a coach.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? If you look at the talent level that Stanford has relative to where they finish in the rankings every year, he might be the best coach in the country. Okay? The formations, how they use their players, what they do, how well coached they are. I think the sky's the limit. I think Stanford's going to win the Pac-12. I don't know if they'll go undefeated, but I do think they'll win the Pac-12, and McCaffrey will be right there in the Heisman as far as where that's going. So I like Stanford. I love how they come out and they play a physical style of football. They don't have 4 or 5 wide receivers they can run by you. So what do? They line up with 2, 3 tight ends.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what? They always produce offensive linemen. They go to the next level. They know how to run the football. Defensively, they run this 3-4 style because they don't have 4-3 defensive ends. So they create pressure with scheme and versatility more than with athletic ability. So I like what they do. I like where they're headed. I think David Shaw is phenomenal. I think Stanford's going to win the Pac-12 this year.
Now, you said you not sure if they go undefeated. Let me read you off their schedule and tell me who you think could end up beating them, Boog. I've got at UCLA, at Washington State at home, at Notre Dame, versus Colorado, at Arizona, versus Oregon State. Then they'll travel to Oregon, and then they're at Cal, and then they end the season with Rice at home. Any of those teams jump out to you, say, hey, they could end up taking down Stanford?
Well, anytime you go on the road games are going to be tough. At Notre Dame is going to be a doozy because Notre Dame can provide the antithesis of what Stanford likes to play against, which is speed and athleticism. At Washington, it's going to be a tough one. That's a night game at Washington. How that goes, we'll definitely see. So there's some road games at Washington, at Washington, at UCLA. Those games at Notre Dame, those are 3 games that if I'm David Shaw, I'm going to pay attention to them and kind of hold up, guys. Let's make sure we give this team our full attention.
Okay. I'm just going to throw this out there because I'm looking at Oregon on the schedule. Has Oregon cooled off in the last few years? And, they were hot. They were that hot team in college football for maybe a good 4 or 5 year span, right? Have they cooled off, in your opinion, as far as the popularity?
I think the program is at a point right now where they need that 1 or 2 marquee players.
Mm-hmm.
Remember they had the quarterback, they had Mariota, and before him they had Darren Thomas. So they've always had those players that were marquee players, top of the line players, and they just right now at the quarterback position is struggling. They had the kid who transferred in to play quarterback. I can't. His name is slipping my mind right off the top.
Yeah, I know you mean.
He transferred in. He transferred in to play quarterback. He wasn't the same guy that they were used to playing. Their cachet has always been to get a lot of speed, play at a high tempo, with everybody out there coming and getting kids from Texas and all around the country. Well, kids are finding out, guess what? We don't necessarily have to leave Texas and go to Oregon or leave, California or whatever and go to Oregon. So I think they're going to wind up kind of taking a step back. They're still going to be, a top 15 team, but a team that's contending for national championship every year. I don't think they're going to be that team right now. They still have the cachet because they're Oregon. They're sponsored by Nike and everything that goes with that. I just think at the end, when it's all said and done, they aren't going to attract the talent to compete with the other teams on the East Coast, the Alabama, the Notre Dames, the Ohio State, the Florida State. I think there's too much talent this part of the country that Oregon is going to struggle. And then on their side of the country, they got to fight with, teams out there, UCLA, USC, and teams on the West Coast, Washington with what Peterson is doing at from Boise State. So I like them to be good, but just not be where they once were.
Again, this is Booger McFarland, two-time Super Bowl champion at SEC Booger on Twitter. Make sure you follow him. A lot of knowledge. Make sure you see him on Mike and Mike in the morning, also on the SEC Network. Boog, let's jump into the Heisman frontrunners. Way too early, but, we're fans, and you are a college analyst. I kind of watch. But let's jump into it. Heisman frontrunners, we already threw two out there. Lamar Jackson's probably number one right now. Christian McCaffrey a close second. I would definitely say J.T. Barrett in the conversation. Maybe Deshaun Watson. Where would you go at 3 and 4 right now?
I think you could list them right now. Number 1, I would put Lamar Jackson. 2, Christian McCaffrey. 3, J.T. Barrett. 4, Deshaun Watson. I don't think Deshaun Watson has done anything to warrant being that high just yet. I think that based off preseason hype and everything we thought we knew about him, you could say that we were expecting more. But right now, Clemson offense is struggling mightily. He isn't at a point, in my opinion, that he's gone and being there. But I put him at number 4 right now. But, it's a long way to go, Preston.
Mm-hmm.
It's early. Lamar Jackson is clearly separated. Christian McCaffrey is right behind him. Dalvin Cook hadn't had a 100-yard game yet this year. Leonard Fournette has looked, he hasn't been spectacular. He's been great, but he hasn't been, 200 yards great, which is what we expected of him last year, or what we saw last year. So I think the Heisman Trophy race right now is just kind of materializing a little bit, but it's clearly Lamar Jackson's award right now.
Any surprise players, Boog? Any guys who jumped out to you this year, say either A, they are light years ahead where they're from last year, or B, they're brand new college players coming in and they're making an impact?
Light years ahead, not really. If you go around the country, you start thinking of guys that are playing well. Other than Lamar Jackson, nobody's really jumping out. Jabril Peppers at Michigan is a guy who he would need a Charles Woodson type impact on defense. If he can do that, then he may be there. But this is a year, I think, if you look around, guys such as Lamar Jackson, a quarterback, or whoever, those are the guys that are going to be out front because they touch the ball every play. The running backs we thought with Cook and Fournette and McCaffrey, only McCaffrey is kind of taking a step and kind of wowed some people, but he's not really doing it at the running back position. He's doing that as a receiver and a punt return and all those different things. So It's still starting to materialize. To me, it's still Jackson 1 and Christian McCaffrey 2, and then everybody else is kind of filling in and kind of going from there.
Well, you threw one out there and Clay Helton over at USC as far as being on the hot seat. Any other coaches currently right now you think they have to have a good season or they may be out of their seat at the end of the season?
Well, I always look to the conference that I cover. You look at Les Miles, you look at Gus Malzahn. Gus Malzahn hadn't won a home game in over a year. Les Miles can't afford to go 9-3 in Baton Rouge. They want 10 or more wins down there. So I think Kevin Sumlin at Texas A&M, those are 3 right there that their teams need to win. And if those teams don't win and win big, I think there are going to be some issues. Clay Helton will be another. I think Charlie Strong, he's not in any danger of getting fired, but he would be well versed to come out and give us a good season this year. Okay. He needs 9-10 wins this year. I don't think they're going to fire him, but he definitely needs a big year. Other than that, James Franklin at Penn State. I think there's a guy who he's done a great job leading the program through the Joe Paterno and Jerry Sandusky fiasco. However, at some point, you got to line up and play football and play at a high level. So I'm watching that situation. There'll be others to materialize over the course of the season, though.
How do you think Butch Jones is sitting right now at Tennessee?
could ask me that in 7 days, I could tell you. Because Butch Jones and Tennessee play Florida. It's the biggest game of Butch's, in my opinion, it's the biggest game of Butch's tenure there.
Okay.
Because if they win this game against Florida on Saturday, they go 4-0. They're leading the SEC East, and they control things. You lose to Florida, now it's the same old story. Everybody's pointing toward everything that's always happened. You can't beat Florida. Been 12 straight years. I think it's the biggest game in Butch Jones' tenure in Florida or at Tennessee for that reason. Okay, he needs to beat Tennessee. He needs to get this team headed toward an SEC East title, which you have an opportunity to play for an SEC championship. If he wins this game, all's well. If he doesn't, Butch Jones' seat's going to start to warm up a little bit. Not because he hasn't been successful, but because he hasn't achieved where he needs to achieve. And we just saw Georgia fire Mark Richt after winning 10 games so many years, not because he wasn't successful, but because he underachieved.
All right. Louisville at Clemson on the 1st of October. That'll be a big game to be circled. Everybody want to see Lamar Jackson versus Deshaun Watson on the 1st at Clemson. Give me maybe 2 or 3 other games, Boog, that fans definitely should circle that's going to have either conference championship implications and or definitely college football player and playoff implications.
Well, I think you start in the Big Ten. Ohio State, Michigan State, that's coming up. Obviously, Ohio State, Michigan at the end of the year. Those 2 games in the Big Ten. I think when you go to the ACC, for me in the ACC, I would look not only Louisville, Clemson, Florida State. Okay, Florida State's only got 1 loss, guys. If Florida State runs the table, they're right where they want to be. So Florida State, Clemson is still going to be a big game. In the SEC, Alabama and Tennessee, depending on what Tennessee does this weekend. I think in the Pac-12, when you get Stanford taking on Notre Dame, I think that's going to be a big game. So there's a lot of big games left. I mean, I could probably list 25 of them across the country. Houston, let's not forget about Houston. Houston right now is this year's new flavor of the month. So when they play Louisville in a few weeks, that game is going to be a big game. So a lot of big games left out there. Who can put themselves in position the last month of the season to play for something? That'll be the key. Last
question. Hurricanes. Mark Richt doing some good things right now, still early. Miami hasn't played their ACC competition just yet. Big win against FAMU, FAU, and App State, posting 70, 38, and 45 points on the board, respectively. They've got Georgia Tech, followed by Florida State at home. They'll travel to Georgia Tech, then they'll have Florida State down in Coral Gables. What's your take on the Hurricanes, and can they beat both Georgia Tech and Florida State?
Well, to me, number one, yes, they can, but they need to realize that they play Georgia Tech first. That triple option offense, man, is tough to prepare for. It's got to be physical. It'll be a great test against Florida State to see where they are as a program, and I'm pretty sure that Mark Richt is looking forward to that. If they beat Georgia Tech, if they can put all their eggs into the Florida State basket, I want to see where they are. I want to see where Mark Richt has his program in year one, to see just how attuned, how locked in they are, how much of his philosophy and his personality has been put on this team. I like where they are. They got a good young quarterback in Brad Collier. I think the playmakers and the speed and athleticism they show is there. The key's going to be, I think, defensively. Anytime you're building a program defensively, you got to be able to play and stop people on defense. They've yet to be tested defensively. I think Georgia Tech will test them defensively, but more importantly, Florida State will let them know where their defense is. And I think if they can stand up defensively, Mark Richt is going to build a winner. He built a winner at Georgia. He'll build a winner at Miami. I don't know if it's this year, but I think it eventually will come.
That's Booger McFarland. Boog, we appreciate the expertise, my man, and the breakdown. We'll try and get Boog on as much as possible throughout the college football season with his other obligations. Make sure you look him up on Twitter at SEC Booger, Booger. Boog, we appreciate it, my man.
All right, thanks, buddy.
All right, big dog. We'll be back next week with some more college football breakdown. Make sure you tune in. Follow us on all our social media platforms. Trying to do some good things, trying to expand our coverage. Over and out.